everyone. Welcome to Tuesdays with Trailblazers, brought to you by Martech Edge, the video podcast where we bring you the latest trends and insights in marketing and technology. I'm your host, Adesh, and today we have with us Yuri Yarovoy, SVP of Growth at Medal, who specializes in driving sustainable growth at scale. With over 15 years in the gaming and tech space, he's helped build and scale some of the industry's most successful platforms. So without further ado, let's welcome Yuri. Hey Yuri, how are you doing today?
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
We'd be quite excited to see what insights you have for us, Yuri. But I think our audience would love to know about your career path, the 15 years that you've spent in the gaming and tech space, everything about it.
Sure. It's a weirdly non-traditional kind of path. I was going to be a lawyer, and that didn't happen, clearly. And just found myself doing SEO at a couple of the big holdcos. So I started at Omnicom, then moved to Publicis, mostly in pharma and like pharma adjacent stuff, which is not my cup of tea. Then when I moved to California, I got very lucky and joined a company called BlueStacks, and we built the largest platform to play mobile games on PC. And I was lucky enough to have a CEO that just gave me free reign and said, hey, go try stuff, fall on your face, figure it out. And that gave me a lot of freedom and experience. And again, very grateful for that. But I also realized that I never want to go back to pharma, let alone client services in the way that I was doing it there. And most importantly, I loved gaming. And as a gamer, I was like, I'm never leaving this industry. So did that, then moved to a company called Kanga, where we were building a fandom platform for gaming creators. Was acquired by Riot, and then eventually made it over to Metal, where I've been for the last 4+ years.
I mean, that's very unusual pharma to gaming altogether. Did he imagine that in your wildest dreams?
College age me was like, I'm gonna take the LSATs and then I'm gonna go to law school. Yeah, I'm very glad I had a mentor at the time that was like, do you really want to be a lawyer? And I hesitated for maybe a split second too long in giving him an answer. And he's like, don't do this to yourself because you can't give me a straight answer. And I was like, lucky, got very lucky.
So let's kick things off with a big one, Yuri. Gaming is no longer just entertainment. All of us know that. It's kind of culture right now, right? So in your omni-channel strategy, what role does gaming currently play? Are you seeing it more as a brand building channel, or is it driving performance too?
It can do both. I think mainly, and my hot take here is, I think marketers, brands, advertisers need to completely reconfigure how they approach gaming as a marketing channel, because applying kind of the measurement and attribution methodologies that we've built for more traditional channels, digital or, out of home, or the kind of like the traditional print driven, let's measure impressions and brand awareness and the halo effect of the spend. That doesn't apply to kind of active experiences, right? A lot of our marketing is built around passive viewing rather than deeply engaged interaction. So, the IAB just released a framework for gaming, and I think that's really good. It's moving us in the right direction because we're thinking about it, right? But it's still based on this we need an impression and, video completion rates. And if I am playing a game and you interrupt me with your brand, not only am I going to be pissed off, just very, very upset, but I'm also going to hate your brand. I'm going to have a visceral negative reaction towards your brand. It's not like when I'm watching a YouTube video or a TV show where you interrupt me with a commercial. I'm used to that. I'm passively viewing, I'm passively engaging, right? I'm probably looking at my phone while that ad is playing anyway, and it's okay, right? But if I'm actively engaged in a game experience and you shove your brand in a really shoehorned way into that experience, I ain't gonna like it. I'm not gonna lie. Right. And I don't speak speak for myself, obviously, but I can speak for a vast majority of the gaming audience, whether they're 12 years old in Roblox or 35 playing Call of Duty.
Absolutely agree with you on that one. And I would say not just the gaming industry, I think it's sporting as a whole, where you would be pissed off, if something as interesting as an NBA game is happening, let's say the finals, and you have a brand shoving the brand on you in the middle of the game. No one likes it. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, but I mean, then you have sports like football, which are effectively built around television, right? there are TV breaks built into the game, sort of, right? Like, so you have this ad saturation that you wouldn't otherwise have in a normal game.
Great. So great to know that. And the second question is something I am keenly awaiting an answer from you, and would love to know what your answer would look like. So it's about Gen Zs. With Gen Zs, we know that passive content is pretty much dead. They want interaction, they want participation, maybe even a little bit of chaos. So how are you thinking or rethinking branded content to offer real in-game utility or community-driven experiences?
I think Gen Z, Gen A, like even millennials have kind of become numb. I'm not even going to say ad blind. They've just become numb to advertising. And I think, the buzzword for the last 2, 3, 5 years has been like, how can we authentically engage? But like, it's a fun, like at Cannes, authenticity was huge this year, right? How can we be authentic for the audience? But no one actually wants to understand the audience enough to engage with that audience, right? So I think by and large, what we see for Gen Z, like at Metal especially, is and Gen A and millennials, right? This kind of generation that is like heavily playing games where gaming is shaping their culture and how they're also shaping culture back. I think these generations are much more interested in ownership. This is why you see this kind of like rise in UGC platforms. And I'm not talking about UGC platforms like TikTok or YouTube. Those are huge, but especially in gaming, you see this trend of within Roblox or Fortnite UEFN or Minecraft, right? Or actually, like GTA 5 has an role play scene, right? Which is much bigger than GTA 5 Online ever was, really. More people play role play than they do the core game. And the underlying the underlying thread for all of this is these players want ownership. They want to have input in how that experience is actually shaped, right? And you see this emergence where I can buy a $70 title from Activision or from EA or whoever, and it's very top down, right? It's very uncustomizable. It gives me the really beautiful manicured high fidelity experience that you would expect for $70. But you now see players that are like, I actually don't care about this at all. I want the game to function the way I want. I want these features. I want to be able to do this X, Y, and Z, right? And I'll go play a really low fidelity game that I have complete ownership over because I built it. And or, play someone else's experience that gives me all of this, even if it doesn't look beautiful. I just want to play. I just want to socialize with my friends. And I think a lot of brands are missing this idea of gaming is the new commons for these generations. Meet space, I'm going to call it, right? Like in real life, interactions are shrinking. And I'm not going to dive deep on the long-term implications of society, right? Of us not being able to hang out in person and have core interactions in person, right? Forget that. Well, we can't reject the reality of the shift to digital experiences, or digital experiences replacing a lot of these core social interactions. And a lot of those core social interactions are happening in game, mainly because it's a very interactive medium, right? So I can go and play and hang out and interact with these virtual worlds and still have talk about life with my friends while I'm doing this. And I think a lot of brands are just not ready to understand how to inject themselves into this very organic social experience, right? It's not just gaming. It's not like I'm going to get points or I'm going to kill the other team or get headshots or, whatever, get some achievement. It's I'm hanging out with my friends. I'm actually spending time with them. This is how I and my friends spend time together. You're trying to inject yourself into that experience in a organic way. I think that's the biggest challenge, right? And I think this is the expectation now from this generation.
Absolutely. Sum it up. Virtual is the new real.
Yeah. That's, again, social implications aside, happy to wax poetic about the philosophical implications of us moving all of our core social interactions to a digital space, but this is the world.
Makes sense. Now, Yuri, have you seen cases where user generated content actually outperforms your traditional branded assets, especially on platforms like Roblox?
I mean, so for us, for Metal, and by the way, Metal, we're the largest game clip social platform around, right? Last year we had 3 billion hours of game clips watched on the platform. So a lot of that happening, right? We see this across all games. That's the kind of the benefit of us. We see every game trends by and large. The user generated content for us for Metal specifically is, again, like this core social gameplay, right? We're not building something to make people famous, right? So, and I'm speaking mainly from the Metal perspective. Like, we're not building a TikTok to make people famous. We're not trying to drive a huge creator economy play, right? We're building more of a Snapchat experience where you and I play games together. We have a couple friends that also play with us. And those are the people that are really going to care about these memories we've made in game and these moments that we've captured. So that's who I'm going to share them to, right? And I think within the context of Metal and the user-generated content created in Metal, there's a lot more trust built in, right? I think brands, marketers, advertisers are mired with this kind of traditional idea of like, I'm going to pay for the biggest megaphone possible, and that's going to be really effective for me, right? So if I give Mr. Beast $10 million and he can reach all of his subscribers, my brand is going to win. And I think we're starting to see massive cracks in that thesis. We're starting to see massive diminishing returns because the generation that actually watches Mr. Beast sees through the bullshit. Excuse my language. I don't know. You can bleep me out. They know that Mr. Beast got paid a stupid amount of money to shill a brand. And that's not authentic. That's not really going to resonate. Same thing for in-game experiences in Roblox. Brands are dropping millions of dollars to build these experiences that look really good at Cannes, right? They look really good to CMOs, but they're really ineffective. But they can go to their C-suite and say, look, we're innovating. We're very innovative. And all of that, I would say like 10% of that, 90% of that spend, it goes to like 10% of that audience. Right? Whereas like 90% of the audience are people like that are on Metal, just play games together, that trust each other, and there's a network of word of mouth trust. And the user generated content there, when it's branded or when there's a brand activation included, carries a ton more impact and a ton more trust because it's shared within a circle of friends rather than a top-down parasocial, I'm investing in a megaphone and not really the audience.
Makes sense. Now, we spoke about this new landscape, right? How are you moving away from an old school ad format towards more integrated, value first brand activations inside immersive gaming space? What KPIs do you watch to measure whether it's working or it's not working?
I think the best approach right now, as we're, kind of to our earlier point where there's not really clarity around what measurement frameworks exist that are really deeply applicable to gaming. We have the measurement frameworks around impressions and conversion rates and all of that. But again, they're not one-to-one within a game or within a game environment or even adjacent to gaming. So the way that I like to, for the brands that we work with, the way that I like to frame it is you need a hybrid approach where you have your standard IAB formats and they're really good and they drive top of funnel brand awareness and they check all those impression, VCR boxes. Cool, right? But then the down funnel, the actual engaging stuff, at least for us, is around how do we mobilize an audience to create content, right? Again, for Metal, the main output of Metal is 100% of our users are content creators. We don't follow the same kind of like 99.1 paradigm that Reddit kind of created, right? Where they said, 1% of all of our users are creating all the content, 9% of our users are engaging with that content, and 90% of our users are just consuming. They don't input into the network, right? We're completely the opposite. 100% of our users are actually creating content, right? And sharing that content to secondary and tertiary channels. So for us, because we have all this content, and all of that content is gaming content, what we do is how do we integrate your brand into people already creating content so it just amplifies your brand beyond Metal. I like to kind of like think of it as like, how do I pay for earned media? And as a marketer, you always want that earned media, right? Because that's free, right? So for us, it's like, how do we blend the standard IAB formats with these core activations that generate a ton of content? And as that content gets shared externally on Metal and beyond, it just amplifies that brand, right? And we do this through clip contests, through rewarded bounties, through like basically mission-driven activities within games or adjacent to games that just create tons and tons and tons of content. And for brands, I think that's the biggest win, is something that's more evergreen, where we have this content that just lives on and gets shared organically through all of these channels.
Got it. Now, I want to talk about long term equity. not just campaign spikes, right? So how are you redefining success metrics when engaging Gen Z through gaming? Are you looking more at shareability or co-creation or brand lift?
For us, brand lift and like brand lift studies, it's kind of like part and parcel with like running a campaign within a third party platform. You need those. We'll do that for you, right? That's normal. I think for us, our platform grows on shares, right? It's kind of like what I was talking about earlier, where the majority of, all of our users are creating content, and that content isn't created in a vacuum. Because people are creating content around social experiences within the games they play, whether it's Counter-Strike or Fortnite or Roblox or GTA or one of the other 7,000 games that people play on Metal, because they're creating those clips in conjunction with other people, it's naturally shareable. So for us, we optimize for shareability. The kind of the number one metric, the driving product metric at Metal is shares. Are people creating content that is getting shared both on Metal and beyond? Whether it's pasted into a Discord chat, or whether it's shared to TikTok or uploaded to YouTube or IG, wherever.
Got it. Got it. Now, speaking about capability gaps, right? What capability gaps, such as creative agility, partnerships, or measurement, do you think need to be addressed to scale gaming-based Gen Z engagement?
Measurement is going to be key, right? I think I think we need to, as a marketer now more focused on the media side, seeing kind of both sides of the fence. I think we, as the marketing half of me, need to adjust our expectations around games and adjust the way that we engage gamers. And that requires a change in what we consider campaign success, right? I think if we're using old measurement schemes in new campaign structure and new advertising platforms, we're in for a bad time. I think it's not going to back out in terms of investment. At the end of the day, right? Like, you have to look your CFO in the eye and say, look, I'm going to invest $500,000 in this because of X result that I believe is going to come. And if that X result is based on old methodologies or old kind of expectations inside a platform that just doesn't align with that, your CFO is going to be really upset when that P&L comes up for review. So I think we need to really readjust how we invest in gaming. I think at Metal, this is why we take this kind of hybrid approach for brands that we work with, where we can show you these top of funnel metrics around impressions and VCR and click through and all of that, right? But then we show you, look, not only did you get all of these metrics, but also you have 150,000 clips created that are now shared to Discord and shared to TikTok, and now have reach well beyond what you ever expected, right? So your cost, like, again, if you want to back this out into a CPM, your cost, your CPMs are fractions of a penny compared to what you would have paid for a Mr. Beast integration with arguably similar reach.
Perfect. Now, I'd love to pivot a bit. How are exploring AI-driven personalization within games? How can you talk about how AI is helping you tailor branded experiences in real time based on user behavior?
So for us, like my take on AI as a whole within gaming is it's going to help the indies, the single double A kind of studios or individual creators or Roblox developers or Minecraft server developers scale their experiences and provide that customization that this generation of gamers wants. And I think they're going to be able to do this a lot faster and iterate a lot quicker than a AAA. I think where AAAs are catching a lot of heat is, well, we could just replace all of our artists and still maintain this $80, $70 price point. But now we may be able to move a little faster and a little cheaper, so our margins improve. But the quality of game doesn't change markedly for the end customer, for the gamer, right? So I think there's going to be sort of perhaps a rebalancing in expectations. I think it's going to help AAAs on the margin side. I think it's going to really help these smaller devs move faster and provide better experience, and ultimately eat into the pie or eat into the AAA pie. For us and for advertising, I think what we're going to see is brands bring us creatives that are much more iterative, much more customized, and all AI generated. I think that's going to happen. In terms of providing an AI-based experience on the ad side, I don't think we're there yet for brands, like from us to a brand. I think maybe eventually that's going to be something, but I think given that our platform is geared around the user creating content and us injecting the brand in a holistic way into that content or around that content, I really want that kind of one-to-one touch that I don't think we need scale for necessarily just yet. And I think where AI really helps is like when you need scale, when you need to do something at scale.
Got it. Perfect. I mean, love those insights. Now, finally, what does ethical branding looks like in gaming for Gen Z? We're talking data, we're talking safety inclusion. How do you ensure that your brand shows up right in these environments?
I think there's a safety conversation that also needs to happen. Again, we're a UGC platform, so we invest heavily into safety. Like we have a dedicated trust and safety team. We use a bunch of different technologies to scan all of our content, all of the audio, video, text, etc. Right? That's because we've built this platform well before we monetized with ads, right? So we built this to keep our users safe, and now we can extend the technology to and processes to brands. But I think also kind of coming back to this idea of authenticity, brands need to adjust their expectations when targeting gamers. I had a conversation with a brand who will rename nameless, who shall rename nameless, that was like, we want to target Fortnite and Call of Duty, but we don't want guns. I don't think you understand how this works at all. Like, this isn't going to work. Sorry. Right? Like, or some brands are like, well, this person said shit. If you want to reach users where they are and you want to be authentic, I think you need to adjust your expectations around what authenticity means within the context of games. Again, gaming is a social experience happening between multiple people, and you're catching people as they make memories, as they bond. And that's going to contain moments that are not aligned with what we want from brand safety today. So I think we need to meet in the middle somewhere, because right now, if you're like, no guns, no violence, but I want to target Call of Duty, I hate to break it to you, but that's just not going to work, right? I think we as marketers, right, as brands, need to understand that we either want to meet the customer where they are, and that means being authentic through that moment, or we just don't invest. I think it's very much black or white. I think it's very binary there, because you're not going to get authenticity by trying to twist the user to conform to your standards. It's not going to happen. And frankly, you're going to create resent from the.
Got it. I think it's a never-ending debate, anyways, because absolutely. There's no right, there is no wrong. But as you rightly said, you don't want to meddle with the authenticity. And I totally agree on that.
Yeah. It's an interesting. I think it's an interesting shift, right? There's so many dollars flowing into gaming now that I think it's inevitable. And I think with the rise of UGC experiences, you're going to have a lot more pushback, right? I think when you have these large corporations and large advertisers kind of come together, the money kind of pushes the conversation, right? So you have adoption of brand safety standards or measurement standards that can be commercially viable for both parties. But with UGC games, you have a 15-year-old kid or 16-year-old kid building the biggest game ever with Grow a Garden. And like that person might be a lot more interested in providing a good experience for their end player than your brand dollars, because he's making a killing anyway, right? Like your brand dollars, even like a 7-figure check, is going to be incremental to how much that kid is earning now, right? Like per month. Like very incremental, right? So if that's the case, right, like how do you, and you want to be part of, let's say, Grow a Garden, how do you actually inject yourself into that without, knowing for a fact that the kid is not going to sacrifice, and I'm sorry for calling them a kid, but like they're not going to sacrifice their perspective or ideals because they don't need to. They don't actually need your money, right? I think it's going to create a lot of tension. I think the AAAs are going to have to adjust, and like you have platforms like Enzu that built in-game advertising, and they're doing a great job doing that, right? And I think investing in that way may continue to kind of like drive safe dollars. Yeah, platforms like us, where like we take brand safety very seriously. But I'm also, if the campaign doesn't make sense for our user base, or if it's done in a way that I know is not going to be good long term for our users, we may not run it, right? And then you have like the very other side of the spectrum where like they just want to, people built UGC experiences that are very much geared towards the player, not towards the money. The money is a side benefit, right? It's a side quest.
Makes perfect sense. Just some personal questions. Which is your favorite game?
Man, I mean, I will die on this hill. Counter-Strike 1.5.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most perfect attack shooter ever made. 1.6 ruined the game, and Source just, it was precipitous decline. CS:GO is trash. CS2 is meh. Yeah, 1.5 or die. I'll die on this hill.
Okay. Minecraft or Roblox?
Ooh, I think Roblox for the diversity of experiences, although I really, really, really love people building unhinged creations like a 1 megahertz processor with Redstone. Like, just like people building computers inside of Minecraft that operate. That's crazy. I really enjoyed that kind of creativity, but I think Roblox has more diversity of experience.
Perfect. Perfect. Let's put the crystal ball out there. Let's bring the crystal ball out here and see, what does Yuri think about changes that are going to happen in the next decade regarding marketing and branding within gaming. At the same time, changes that AI is going to bring in within the gaming industry.
Yeah. Well, I think to the AI question, indie developers, small studios are going to build experiences that are incredibly popular, much faster, and be much more economically viable than the AAAs that are dropping hundreds of millions of dollars on marketing. Right? Probably costs $70 to $100 million to make a new Call of Duty, another, let's call it 50 in marketing spend, right? And they're doing this every year, right? For them to be profitable, for Activision to be profitable in that game takes a lot, right? Whereas you have games like Peak or Repo that cost hundreds of thousands, if not low millions to build, that need to sell 10 million copies or 5 million copies or even 3 million copies, and they're wildly successful and ultimately end up with a DAU that's comparable to a Call of Duty. And then you have Roblox games, which are fractions of that cost, being built at an order of magnitude more scale, being the biggest games in the world, and it's built on this very accessible platform. I think AI is only going to make that side of gaming much, much, much bigger. I think what it's going to do on the larger studio side is make it more efficient, be lower cost of development, but I don't think it's going to have the impact for the end gamer that we anticipate. I think the expectations from gamers are like, I want power to change and customize the experience based on like my preferences rather than these top-down preferences that your creative director said they should be, right? Very story-driven, whatever kind of experience.
Makes perfect sense. Thank you so much for all the insights. I guess that's all the questions I had. Yeah, really love your perception about the gaming industry, specifically about how the control should be with the end users or gamers within itself, and rather not the people on the other side of things. So really appreciate that side of insights coming from you, and thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. This is a lot of fun. If you want to start a gaming tech edge kind of sister podcast that you want to have me on, and we can talk about why Counter-Strike 1.5 is the best game ever made, happy to do it.
I mean, the folds at which the game industry is actually growing, I think we might need a publication which caters to that side of things as well, because of the fact that it's growing exponentially compared to any landscape out there. Really enjoyed hosting you in our podcast Tuesdays with Trailblazers, Yuri. Thank you so much for all the wonderful insights. And thank you all for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review. Until next time, stay tuned with Martech Edge for more insights. Till we meet again, signing off, your host, Sidesh.